Oh, welcome to Notes from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang. With me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama. Jamie, I forgot to do the intro music.
It
Oh, what
happens.
a goofball! What a goofball! It happens. All right. Well, thank you for everyone for joining the show. I'm all flustered because I didn't start the show the correct way, but
The
that's all right.
podcast will have the intro.
It's the podcast will have the good intro, and that's what matters to us. So it's Friday, May 12th. We're gonna be talking. We're gonna do a big recruiting roundup today. I think this might actually be kind of a weekly thing, and maybe there's enough news to where we don't have to. Uh, there's enough news that we can fill the Tuesday, Thursday slot with like other content. But I think we should do a recruiting roundup kind of every week going forward, at least into June, because there's going to be so many, as we're going to talk over today, there's going to be so many visitors and official visits and big recruiting weekends that it's going to be, there's going to be a lot to talk about there. So we're going to be talking about that today. Thank you everyone for joining the show. I first, before we get going, I want to talk to everyone about ESQclothing.com. ESQ Clothing, founded by Ga Wang, a Notre Dame alum. He's got the world's first bamboo shirt that you've seen on Marcus Freeman all over the place. You've seen it at the White House. You've seen it at the Kentucky Derby. You see it on all the recruiting visits that he's taking. And it has stretch, Jamie. We've talked about it before. It has stretch. It feels really good on the body.
It's light,
airy, machine washable, odor resistant, wrinkle resistant. And so you're going to want to check that out at esqclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game, Jamie. It's never too late to upgrade your shirt game. All right. I'm going to be going to a wedding, and I'm going to be in June, and I'm going to be wearing my ESQ shirt because I want people to think I'm classy, and it's a classy thing to do. So that's what I'm going to do for ESQ Clothing. All right. Thank you everyone for joining the show. Pat O'Doherty is here. Pat O'Doherty, I don't recognize your name, but he says it's Friday. Can't wait for the show. Go Irish and keep up the great work. Thank you for being here, Pat. I really appreciate that. CFB Hertz is here. He says Notre Dame recruiting is moving in the right direction. Still a long way to go. I think that's a good way to look at it. I think that's kind of where I come off. And Jamie, Pat O'Doherty says, and this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Who said it, Jamie? Who said it? Last show. Now that Nebraska has offered Rizak, I'm on board. Being from Omaha, it's pretty interesting. Nebraska fans are definitely questioning Rule and what took him so long. And what was my big point last week, Jamie? What was it?
First of all, I also got to mention that Pat O'Doherty added the LOL emojis in there too. So that he's saying it in jest. Right now,
no. I think that's true, but it is like, look,
but he's saying that because there are people that feel that way.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think the person who was making big complaint about it is going to show up today. So that's probably what's going to.
And I hope Xander does, and I hope he does, because that was the point I was making. Is that, look, I'm sure Nebraska fans want to know why is Notre Dame after this Omaha guy, and we're not on him, we're not offering him, and so they send the offer, and in our opinion, that's going to be too little, too late, and so they missed the boat, and that's unfortunate. So that's the way it goes. Aiden Curtin says, my vote is for ESQ. So thank you for that, Aiden Curtin, and thank you everyone for joining the show so far. If this is your first time listening to the show, or if you're catching us on replay, you've never caught the show and you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button. Go for it. Get the show out there. We're close to 6,000 subscribers. That would be awesome if we could hit that before the next show. And hit the like, and check us out on iTunes and on Spotify as well. Apple Pods. The link is in the description below. All right, Jamie. Let's talk a little bit about some of the latest things. Speaking of linebackers, there was another linebacker, Jamie. I'm very interested to get your thoughts on kind of what Notre Dame is doing at linebacker right now, because they've got the offer out to Rizak, right? They've got the offer out. We think that they are going to. We think that that eventually Kennedy Urlacher is going to end up at linebacker, right? Just because of his style, his style in the game. and the way that he plays. And then they put out another offer this week to Kamari House, I think it is, from St. John Bosco. And he is another guy who is in the same kind of mold as Rizak, in my opinion. They have similar skill sets, and
similar as well.
Similar, yes. And they have similar skill sets, and they have kind of the same body type too. I think Rizak is a little bit taller. And I think in my opinion, Rizak is the better athlete between the two players, but they're both very similar. And obviously House is from St. John Bosco. He's teammates with Kingston Villamea Asa. I don't know how to say his last name. Asa? Yeah. Villamea Asa. So they're teammates. And I think it's smart for Notre Dame to get in on that program because A, it's a top program, and B, they don't have the tradition of being like a feeder system into USC or UCLA.
They're like a national, I would say national, like in terms of where guys have gone. I mean, certainly they sent guys to Ohio State. They sent guys, I believe, to Georgia. I mean, DJ Wangale was the quarterback there. He ended up at Clemson. Like, I think Josh Rosen was a Bosco guy too, and then obviously he was a UCLA guy, right? Like they're definitely not a USC feeder school like it seems like modern day is in a lot of years.
Yeah. Brandon Renshu says Skimler Smill sets. So that's what we're gonna go with. But tell me about Kamari House, Jamie. What did you see in him? How do you think he fits into the class at this point?
Well, I mean, I liked him. I thought he was a really explosive laterally. That was the best way to put it. Like I thought he was. I think in terms of that, he was a little bit more impressive than Rizak for me. Just from that perspective, obviously Rizak's bigger. I'd say Rizak's probably a little bit faster.
Yeah,
maybe not, but just not as quick, right?
Straight line.
I mean, Rizak. Straight line. But I mean, I would say House. Like you see him like run deep with like vertical threat. Out of the slot. He's a guy who lines up on the edge quite a bit, as you can kind of see here, right? And he makes a ton of plays, like just where like that kind of play there too, where you think, okay, he's got to go through, like go through the block. But if you're that kind of explosive, you can do that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Where you like jump and avoid and lateral explain back. And that's kind of where like he kind of really stands out to me, right? Is that kind of like reactive athlete. I always call it like reactive athleticism, right? So yeah, like a guy goes down and chasing the perimeter. I think what it says is that they're kind of looking for that. Well, one, I mentioned, in the last couple of weeks that more guys who are kind of like safety types are like ending up as NFL players, guys who are converted safeties. Like, so going all the way back to like Jimmy Johnson at Miami, that was like a thing, turning safeties into linebackers to get more speed on the field. And so it's always been a thing, but now you're really starting to see where it's just, the game is different. So it's less like of that old school Mike Thumper types. And you get more of these guys who are just athletes, right? That you think, oh, this guy checks these boxes athletically, and we're going to convert him into the kind of linebacker we see. And I would say, if I was going to look at House, he's just kind of like more of like a chess piece kind of guy for Bosco. That's kind of how they use him. And I mean, similar to Rizak as well. And that's how I would kind of put it with House and these guys. And it's similar to JOK, and wouldn't put either of those guys on JOK's level. Like, even I know JOK wasn't the highest rated guy, but I had him as a 4-star. And I think if you look at his, like, he was like Virginia's whatever 6A or whatever the classification, like player of the year, and he made a ton of plays on defense. Was like a super productive player on offense. I mean, these guys aren't the same level of player that JOK was. But it's similar Smill sets, right? That's how you'd say it, right? They have that kind of thing, and that's what you're kind of looking for when, like, so Jack Kaiser as a rover, it's a different, like, he's more of like an old school Sam. Even though he's a good athlete, he doesn't quite fit that, where House and Rizak kind of do fit more of that. And to me, it's more of a signal that they want to have that kind of guy as an option, right? They or maybe multiple kind of guys, because they don't really have that. That was one thing where Notre Dame was kind of veering towards that when with Clark Lee, where they were like, oh, we want to find this kind of guy, and then they kind of went away from it, right? And I think that's part of the reason that they played like almost exclusively nickel last year was because Tariq Basie's one of the best guys on the team, so they want to play him. He's a great player at nickel. That's part of it. And the other part is, I don't think they had somebody that they felt was like the right fit at rover. Like, yeah, Jack Kaiser was the starting rover. The guy barely ever lined up out of the box. When he played right as an inside linebacker, right? So, you know, I see this all the time where these people are like, oh yeah, well, Jack Kaiser's a rover. How's he going to make the switch? I'm like, did you watch the games last year? He made the switch. Like, that was a thing that was like actively happening. And I think you want to just be in a position, especially because there's so many teams that spread to run, right? Not spread to pass, right? Especially like those veer and shoot teams, especially, right? Like, they're spread to run. And when you play those teams, you don't necessarily want to have, you know, a tiny like slot corner out there. You want to have a bigger option, but a guy who's athletic enough to play on the perimeter. And that's kind of how I see a guy like House.
Yeah. And they are definitely chasing that JOK skill set, you know? And, if anyone hasn't caught my interview with Sean Crawford that I did on, I guess it was Wednesday, check it out. It's on the podcast feeds and it's on the YouTube channel. So check out the interview I did with Sean Crawford, but we talked a lot about the nickel position and how it's so, and he said one of his favorite parts of playing the position was all the run fits and how active he was in the running game and how much that was such a factor in that spot. And I asked him, you know, at the end of the interview, like, who the best player he ever played with was. And he's someone, you know, obviously he played next to Kyle Hamilton. So I thought that might be his answer. He said JOK, and he said it was not even close. Right. And so that just kind of shows, like, someone who's able to play that position, play it well. I mean, that makes such a big difference on the defense. And we kind of talked about how they could match up with whoever because he was such a good athlete. He could cover and then he could play in the box as well. It's kind of like changes the math is a way to, a lot of people talk about players like this, to talk about players like Kamari House and Teddy Rizak, and they're looking for those kind of, I mean, even Kennedy Urlacher, right? Like, you're looking for that skill set. And so that's what I think Notre Dame is after. And I think that's smart. I think that's a smart way to go about it. You want to find these guys who, you know, I think a lot of the time, and we talk about guys who are quote unquote underrated, right? Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah went in the second round of the NFL draft because his position, a lot of defenses don't have really a spot for him. They don't have a spot for the way that he plays. Yeah. And I think that's true of Notre Dame's defense as well. And that's why I think you would see Notre Dame take a chance on someone like, or I don't want to say take a chance on, but like evaluate a player like Teddy Rizak and evaluate a player like Kamari House and someone like Jack Kaiser, right? Even them, like they value them in a different kind of way than other schools will because they don't really have a role for a player like that. And Notre Dame does. Yeah. And so that's why I think you would see Notre Dame jump on somebody over, you know, some other schools who just don't really have a fit for them.
Yeah, and I think there's something to taking great athletes and then like just utilizing them in the best way possible. Because if Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah went to another school, he might have went to Virginia and he might have sucked.
Because or he just might have been just a guy. He might have been just a guy.
Like, I mean, he wasn't going to suck, but he was just not going to be the kind of player. He was perfect for that spot. But the thing is too, is like, you know, previously to him, Asmar Bilal was the rover, right? The starting rover the previous year, before JOK became a starter there. And those guys are two, I mean, Bilal's a good athlete, but they're two completely different players. And you use JOK differently than you would Bilal, just like how when Drew Tranquil's there, I mean, Drew Tranquil's not the same as JOK. So, I mean, although he's another good athlete, right? So that's the thing that, you know, matters the most is if you're getting these guys, one, it kind of increases what the possibilities of what you can do, whether that's your base defense, whether that's sub packages or whatever. And the other thing, it's finding guys who are just the best football players and getting them on the field and on the roll. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I just said about Bracey before, right? Like Bracey was one of the best 11 on defense. They needed to play him. They needed to play him. So, and imagine if they just said, okay, well, Bracey's one of the best 11, so he's going to play corner, and then Hart, you're moving over to boundary. Well, then Benjamin Morrison doesn't play. You know what I mean? And then you do that, and that's the base. Then Benjamin Morrison never becomes the guy. Like, no, if you're getting the best 11, you adjust to your personnel and what you have. And I think that's super important, and it's always been the way to be the most successful in college football because your roster is just, there's so much turnover. Like, from year to year, that you have to be able to play the best guys possible. And, you know, you might have your base fundamentals, but you have to be able to switch and diversify based on the personnel you have.
What do you think this means for like going after guys like I get, okay, I'll put it in a different way because since we're talking about linebackers now. We think Rizak's going to be in the class fairly soon. Soon. They already have Kenny Urlacher, who fits that kind of skill set. They're going after Kamari House. Kingston Villamar Asa, like he's his own kind of like he's in the middle. He's like a middle like will guy. Like he's not going to play on the outside. I mean, who knows? They might put him in Viper. I don't know. Like I say he's in the middle, but maybe they like him in Viper. I don't know. But like you have him, you have Chris Cole, right? Who's going to be visiting official visit on June 9th to the 11th. So he's going to be coming in. And then you have Bodie Calhoun. So like or Cahoon, like who of those guys, like who do you think Notre Dame ought to prioritize? I mean, I don't want to say Rizak because like Notre Dame has prioritized him. Like we think he's going to be in the class. So like throwing, like setting him aside, throw him in a different category. But what about the other guys there? Who do you think Notre Dame ought to prioritize? Assuming Rizak will be in the class.
I mean, obviously KVA is like, I mean, he's
he's also in his own category. Like he's got a spot. That's not even really getting. There's no point in that. Like we don't even need to discuss him. He's a take.
I don't know. Like, I really kind of think it just kind of depends. I think you should really just like, so Bodie Calhoun, if you're looking at him, I don't think that guy's the greatest linebacker right now, but he's a really good athlete.
Yeah.
He's a really good athlete. Like he's raw as a linebacker in terms of like recognition and instincts and stuff like that. But you see that dude run, and obviously he's a great lacrosse player. You know, I believe he's committed to Ohio State as a lacrosse player, right? And you can see like he's a really good athlete, and the best of him, you can see him developing into something. And it's like, I think if you're not, first of all, it's not a great linebacker year. I mean, it's just in general, I did that thing earlier in the week where it's easily the position where people hit on the least, right? They hit on the least in terms of turning guys into NFL guys because, and you know, Matt did the thing from on Sunday Reflections where he talked about like the production of these guys who are like 5-star guys, and it's like, not good. Like there's obviously some guys who are awesome, right? And you know, it's not like you're going to turn down, like, I mean, Jalen Smith and Mantateo worked out pretty good, and obviously you want KVA, you want these top guys, but in terms of just like as you go down, there's a lot of guys who miss because it's one that takes intelligence, instincts, block destruction. You have to have like the physicality, but also the athleticism and all these other pieces that go with it, and be like the quarterback out there. Like you have to have like kind of multiple quarterbacks out there. So I think from that perspective, whoever you get, even if you think that this guy is like just outstanding, unless you just know for sure like this guy's just like one of the smartest football players that out there, and he's going to play that fast because he's that guy. I don't see that guy on the list, so I would just take, you know, I think everybody is kind of in the same boat where you're just taking like, these guys are all good athletes. You try to get KVA, obviously it sounds like you're going to get Rizak soon, and then you take one more guy. I would say that you just, whether it's Cahoon, whoever, right? Like you take a guy who's an athlete that you think you can develop, because that's really, you know, what it comes down to. Because there's just not that, like, even if you'd say like KVA is obviously like a very important guy, well, the next step down for that, there isn't another KVA for them to go after. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's why he's so important, because I see he does check all these boxes, and everybody else is like, this kid's a really good athlete, he's going to need some time. I mean, fortunately, when I look at like Notre Dame and where they're at linebacker, I mean, they got a really good young group of linebackers, so those guys are going to have time.
Yeah, and I was thinking like KVA he's a absolute take, but it's like you don't have to worry about having a backup plan to him, because they're really happy with Nolan Ziegler, they're really happy with Drake Bowen inside. They like Preston Zinter, right? We know, so like they did such a good job in the previous two classes that it's not just like a 5-alarm fire if you don't end up with someone like KVA. Like you swing for him, of course, because he's a great player, or they think he's a great player, and you're going to get him in the class. But if you don't hit him, like, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? But I do think they think like we need someone of the skill set like House or Rizak in the class, or Kennedy or Locker. Before we get off the linebackers, let's talk about Rizak, because we've spoken about him, but we haven't actually like looked at his film and stuff. So I'm going to put up some tape of him, and then we could talk about what he brings to the table, Jamie.
So obviously he's like a multi-position guy. I mean, you see him drop here. Like, you know, he's a fluid athlete with ball skills. You see him come off the edge here, make a guy miss, you know, blitz. You can see him do these kind of things, and it fits into you know, it fits the kind of skill set. Xander, just stop talking, and you're making a fool of yourself. Like it's really like, stop it, buddy. But this is what I like the most, when you see him make plays in space, right? Quick down on the ball, physical. He's a physical wrap tackler. He's a guy that you don't see it too much of this, where he's like working through trash. Obviously, he's not a guy who plays as like an inside linebacker, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, this is just him making plays as a receiver. So this is just the athletic part, right? But it's for me, it's him being able to take proper angles, show the kind of speed to make plays on the perimeter, and like that is going to determine whether or not like he's successful, if he's a rover. Right? That's what it all comes down to, right? Can you go and do you have the speed? Do you have the speed and the athleticism? And are you a good enough tackler to make those plays on the perimeter? Because that's what determines success at that position, really. Because, you know, he has all these other things where you don't see enough of him like blitzing. You see like bits and pieces of it, right? You see that, but you don't see him like having to take on blocks. You don't see him having to make reads from inside the box, right? So that part is all projectable. But I think like if you're thinking about like Obviously, he's a different DeMarvion Overshown, who played at Texas, right? And he was like a really highly recruited guy. He was like a top 50 guy, right?
Mm.
But he was like a 6'4", 200-pound safety. But he was always a tweener. He was always this guy, whatever. And then he ended up playing 2 years at safety, and it didn't really like fit with him. Then he moved to linebacker, and it was a bit of a process. He wasn't like an impact guy right away. And normally you see like a top 50 guy, that guy doesn't stay 5 years, but that's what happened with him. And you just saw like year 3, first year at linebacker, you're like, okay, this is the guy who can play. Like he's now, this is like a better fit for him. And then all of like the recognition, the instincts, all that kind of stuff started to hit for him. And then you started to see, and he obviously grew. He was 6'4", 200. He ended up being like 6'4", 225, 230, right? And that's kind of where he ended up being. And that's kind of how I would see Rizak, is like obviously similar frame. I mean, I wouldn't kind of put him in the same maybe total category. Like Overton was a better football player than him at that time. But that's the kind of player I could see him become later on, is that type of player.
Yeah. Who was the guy you were comparing Urlacher to from Cincinnati? It was like
Jarrell White.
Right. So he played a position that was just kind of in no man's land there, where it's like you're not really a linebacker, you're not really a safety.
They called it sniper. And it was like they're kind of similar to a rover, but it was like because they played that 3-3-5, so a lot of times he's like overhang player.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's like an over. I believe it's like was like 7 off and 2 inside of the inside receiver, or whatever it typically was, right? Like, so yeah, it is kind of no man's land, right?
Yeah.
And, it's not like you're totally like splitting the difference, but it's like, yeah, you are, you're out there kind of on an island almost, right? And you have to be able to be a reactor, but also you can do a lot of things with that in terms of blitz. That's what they did with him too. You have to be able to come. It's like you kind of have to be that hybrid guy in terms of like being a downhill player. And I would say with him, the reason why I made that comp for him, one, because I think Urlacher is probably going to, like, as of right now, I think it's presumptuous to say that he's going to be 260 or whatever his dad ended up like, whatever, right? Like, yeah. But he was but even if Urlacher is like an undersized type of guy, it's a downhill player. They didn't ask him to go and do too much in coverage, right? In terms of like, carrying anything vertically, like that wasn't his role. Like every once in a while they would, but that wasn't his main priority. Like much more where you'd match up with tight ends than you would like a little slot or something like that.
Yeah, and I think for Rizak too. So it's like I think he just operate in that gray area where everything is either lateral or moving forward, right? Because here's the thing, Rizak, he's gonna be like 220. He's gonna be a big, right? So like I don't like I just
he's gonna be really big, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they see him in that role, right? They see him in that size. Like he's obviously he's going to be a big guy. He's a really good athlete. He can run. He's straightforward. So like that's where like they obviously have, because this is the thing with Kamari House too. Like they obviously have a position in mind for these guys that it's like they're not going to be in the junk inside taking on blockers all the time. Like they obviously clearly see them being in space, and and those guys can live in that no man's land where it's like you can't really account for them inside. Like it's like no one's gonna see them. It's like, oh, they're gonna count them in the box, right? Like, but they're gonna be heavily involved in the run game. They can also be involved in that little intermediate area, like the hook to curl area in the passing game and that sort of thing. Like, so that's where. And this is like a highly like NFL, like in the NFL, there are positions like this, right? And that's where Al Golden kind of comes in. It's like he has a way to use guys like this, right? Where maybe other teams don't, right? So that I think that's it's kind of like the star position for Alabama, right? Like sometimes they get these guys, and there was a Sunseri for Alabama.
Yeah.
Like he played that star position. He was a nothing recruit. Like he wasn't. But like he was a great player for Alabama, and he did a great
smart guy and like
right.
really football
And like
intelligent, great instinct.
that's where he kind of thrived. And I think that's the type of player that they're looking for. And I think Rizak could fit that mold really well.
Well, the other thing is that like that was also Minka Fitzpatrick's position. And obviously Minka Fitzpatrick was like a superior athlete, but that's the kind of thing that just shows like the diversity that you can have there. And I think one of the things too that it might indicate is that so Marcus Freeman tried to kind of like shoehorn a bit of that God, I can't even remember what they called their 335 dollar, right? They kind of shoehorned dollar that first year. And it just was like the moment that Maris got hurt and it was like they're playing JD Bertrand as an overhang player, that was like, you got to just throw it out of the thing. And they didn't. And I think they paid for it. And then obviously later in the year, they stopped doing it, right?
Yeah.
But you saw, like, I think that was specifically in that Cincinnati game, like he kind of got exposed in that thing because he's not a space player. That's not who Bertrand is, right? Like Bertrand is an inside linebacker, right? So that's the thing. If you want to go that and you want to do these other things and maybe like be more game plan specific to say like maybe some teams playing dollar is going to be the best solution, or like another kind of sub package, right? Big dime, whatever they want to run, right? Is going to be like the most successful defense for that week. Well, you have to have the athletes to be able to do that. You have to have the people that are versatile enough to do that. So that's what I would think that the kind of direction that they're going is they want to have more options for that kind of stuff and like kind of utilize the roster rather than having like, okay, well, we're getting this guy and he's going to be the fourth team Mike linebacker. And that's how I kind of see it. Like that's how they're kind of building the roster.
Yeah. So David Solomon says 11 out of our 14 recruits are ranked outside the 247. CJ Carr, Cam Williams, and Peter Jones. And Jones is barely inside the top 247, yet somehow we have the fourth ranked class. I do want to talk about, because people are noting, like there are a lot of, like James Lawrence Zenzi, right? Not everything is star rankings, but I will say we're taking a lot of flyers on low-rated prospects on the defensive side this cycle. And I don't even think it's, frankly, I don't even really think it's just defensive, right? Like they are, because even on offense, like the wide receivers, right? Like we are very high on them, but I think nationally, like they're just not national guys, right? I mean, I think what's his name? Isaiah Canyon, isn't he in the top 200? I thought he was.
They're okay. That's the problem is that, and it's not David Solomon or James Lawrence Zenzi's fault, is that you're looking at 247 is 24/7's rankings.
Yeah.
The team rankings are the composite rankings.
The composite rankings, yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of guys in the class, not just Notre Dame's class, but in the class in general. There's not a lot of consensus on guys. And I think one of the things too, especially because On3 has been added to the mix as like another thing, like their rankings are way in one direction compared to things like they're the ones who has like CJ Carr as like the 12th rated quarterback in the class, right? But then on the other hand, they have like Isaiah Canyon, I think it's like a top 100 guy for them, right? And they're one of Bryce Young is a top 200 guy for them. Like they have a bunch of different rankings, you know, that are like up and down. And that just, so from that perspective, it probably is best to look at the composite for all this kind of stuff. And if you look at the composite, okay. Yeah, so they have, you know, 5 guys. Oh, sorry. See, Peter Jones isn't even in the top 200. He's 251 in the composite. But it's like, you could say Micah Gilbert is 260. It's like, okay, like, are we just going to cut it off there? Like,
well, the other part too is like the reason they have 4th ranked classes, that's from the composite and not 247's in-house. I think Jason Smith brings up a good point here about one thing the staff is definitely getting in are more athletic and longer guys. Like that was the point that I was going to make. So that this is a really good point by Jason, is that they are really, like you talked a couple shows ago, or maybe it was last show, about like the big skill kind of body type and the speed element. Like this is a very fast class right now. And that is what they are after, speed and length. And I think that is a thing that Notre Dame has not really had, and especially the explosiveness aspect. Like all of these wide receivers that they have right now are like super explosive. Like I like that's what excites me as an analyst, and just thinking about what this team could be going forward. Like they're a very fast class. Like I didn't think like last year's recruiting class, like or at the receiver position, like Jaden Grayhouse, good player, Rico Flores, good player. I don't see them as like speed guys, like dangerous. This guy is going to run by me if I mess around a little bit, right? Braylon James is a fast guy. Caleb Smith is obviously a fast guy, but like all the like the other two, like they just don't really fit that bill. I don't think that there is any one guy in this class who wouldn't give a defensive back like a lot of pause, and just like he's going to cause me a problem. So that's kind of how I view it. Like I think from a fan point of view, when you're just looking at the rankings and stuff, like I could see being like, why are they like, I don't like this. But like even Rezak, right? Like he can run. He can absolutely run, right? And Notre Dame has verified that. And that's probably a big deal as to why he got the offer that he got, because he can run. He's a really good athlete.
Well, okay, this is the other thing. So people understand how a lot of these rankings work. So a guy like Owen Waffle, right?
Yeah.
Owen Waffle commits super early. He's not going to camps. He's not going and getting tested. So if you don't go to these camps, like a UC report, you don't go to Under Armour camp, you don't whatever, and you don't have like these verified measurables, these people just like they always just move you down. That's how it works, right? They don't. I mean, it's not like they don't look at the film. They do look at the film. I'm not trying to say it's that, but they definitely like bump guys up because they're like, oh, like Isaiah Canyon is a perfect example. He's a guy who had verified testing numbers at a camp, and that's one of the things where people were like, whoa, and that's why he went way up, right? So that's a big part of it, right? That's a big part of it, right? Like where with some of these guys, but then also like, I mean, there's also going to be a difference of opinion with a lot of these guys, like where you're like, I mean, Kennedy Urlacher is ranked higher than Cole Mullins in the composite. And I mean, I wouldn't put them close. I would put Cole Mullins quite a bit higher than Kennedy Urlacher for me, right? Like I think Cole Mullins is like a 4-star kid and Kennedy Urlacher is not. So it's just, you got to make your own evaluations. You see where guys end up. There's obviously like a lot of time left in the process, but I do think people are right to question, because it's just proven. Like the more higher ranked guys you have on your team, on your roster, the better chance you have at winning. Like that's how it typically works, right? In saying that, they do change. I mean, rankings change. I mean, they certainly get guys wrong and stuff too. I wouldn't put this class to where, if I compared this class to where the class was last year at this time, I'd say last year's class was better than this year's class for sure, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But then you got to wait. I think you look at it, where are they going to be at in June after all these visits, where you look at Elijah Rushing, KVA, Justin Scott, whatever, right? All these guys. And then all of a sudden it just changes the whole narrative of everything. Like, so where are they going to be at with those guys? And you just kind of look at it from there. And where are guys going to end up eventually, right? So.
All right, let's, what I want to do is I want to, did I put it in here? Yeah, should be here, right? Oh, no. We're going to go through the official visits, and we're going to talk about who's visiting, and what date, and then we'll just kind of go through like how important they are to the class and that sort of thing. I have to get up the slides. For some reason, I did not do that before. So it's interesting. And we got to talk about running backs too, Jamie, because we haven't talked about them at all. And they obviously have Aeneas Williams, who's in the class. Let's go. Get up. They have Aeneas Williams in the class, and they want to add a second one. And it looks like they're prioritizing a bigger back, Jamie. What do you think about that? Just them prioritizing a bigger back in the class. Do you like that? Because I know like Darian Dupree is a smaller, like kind of, I don't want to say scat back because that's such an old term, but like he's a smaller back, like Theo Riddick type.
Yeah, he's more like Williams than the other guys, right? I mean, I think it's good. Obviously, I think it's safe to assume that Estime is going to have a big year, and then he's probably not going to be at Notre Dame. Like that's just how it works with running backs. Like he shouldn't stay if he has a big year. Like he should go. Like so, and then when he leaves, you don't have anybody else like that, right? You don't have anybody else like that. So yeah, you want to kind of have. I think you want to have. It's like almost like building like a basketball roster. You want to have different guys, right? You want to have bigs. You want to have shooters. You want to have 3-and-D guys, whatever, right? That's kind of like how you're looking at what you're going to have in a receiver room or a running back room. You want to have diversity of talent there. So that's the way I would kind of look at it. Is it makes sense to go that route. Although in saying that, I mean, personally, just straight up, I prefer Darian Dupree to everybody else just as a straight prospect, but that doesn't mean it's better for Notre Dame.
So I very much agree with that. I like Darian Dupree a lot. That's just my opinion. Michael, we will talk. He's asking the latest with Jalen McLean. In my opinion, Notre Dame needs this young man. We're going to be talking about him a little bit later because he said an official visit. So we're going to be talking about him. All right. So June 2nd through the 4th, the official visitors for Notre Dame: offensive lineman Gerby Lambert, running back Kedron Young, defensive end Jalen Harvey, DB Paul Menke, who's a safety, O-lineman Grant Bricks, and a defensive end Malachi Williams. So this is a really big class in terms of a big visit weekend in terms of like very needed on the offensive line, like Gerby Lambert and Grant Bricks. Like I think, Jamie, if Notre Dame, if those two guys left this visit and they said, we want to come to Notre Dame, they're automatic takes, right? Like that's a no brainer. Would you shut down O-line at that point?
Yes. Yeah, I would. So that's the kind of thing where, I mean, I don't know what Styles Prescott is thinking, because I think a lot of people thought he was already going to be committed, but it's the kind of thing where they might decide that just like, well, the boat's full, right? If that was to happen. But I mean, in saying that, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Lambert? Who knows what's going to happen with Bricks? Because obviously he might still take other visits and stuff too. But yeah, I think from there, the only thing I would worry about is like Bricks. I don't think he's 100%. He's probably more of a swing guy. So could be a guard. So he's not 100% a tackle. And Lambert, I mean, I know everyone's like, man, this guy's the answer to everyone's tackle. He might be a guard. Like he could be a guard. I think he probably is going to play tackle, but it's not like 100% a sure thing. So, but either way, this is just not a great class. They are two of the better prospects. They're definitely the two best that Notre Dame is in on right now. Get them, call it a day.
Yeah. James Lawrence Zenzi. I want them to land the Rhode Island transfer to play safety. He's got 2 years of eligibility and physical. I think the latest intel is we feel really good about that. I think that's how we feel. But we'll see, right? Notre Dame, obviously. But I mean, he would fit a need in terms of he would have 2 years, right? And they want someone with multiple years of eligibility. And I think he's a good fit next to. I mean, you got to think of everyone in terms of how do they play with Xavier Watts, because he's going to be the one guy who's like a definite going to happen. And I think that's going to be a good thing for Notre Dame. So let's see how it turns out. But I think they're in a really good spot. Okay, let's talk about Kedron Young a little bit, right? So we obviously we prefer Darian Dupree, but I like Kedron Young as a football player. Let's look at his highlights here, and Jamie, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you see he's a big kid, but like he's got good feet. I think really similar to Stemme in a lot of ways, right? Where you know, in that kind of thing, where like a big man with better feet than you kind of expect.
Yeah.
Just a physical, just like I would say, like he's like a relentless runner is the best way to kind of put it.
You want to hear my take, Jamie?
Yeah.
Frank Gore.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my take.
Yeah. I mean, okay, obviously you see this guy hitting a home run here, and that's great, but I don't think he's a home run hitter. You know what I mean? Like I don't see a guy with like elite burst. He's a guy, I would say probably more similar to Stemme than that, where you're like, okay, like this is a guy who can hit the double, right? But he's not going to be like a guy who's, you know, scoring from 60 on at the college level too often. Not from what I've seen from him, but like great vision, I mean, that's great feet there, great cut, right? Great vision, all of that, right? You just want to see that. So I really like him. And I think like the way that I think my comp for him was like rich man's Tony Jones. So like, who obviously was a good player for Notre Dame, right? And had a good thing. He was like good vision, was like a physical runner, but I think Young is like the best version of that, right? Is the best version of that. So.
I mean, I don't know, man. Tony Jones can't hit the home run. He's got an 85-yarder. What is going on with Tony Jones? I don't know what to make of Tony Jones Jr. Even today, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I always loved him as a player, and he obviously played a lot of good football for Notre Dame, right? And he's a guy who would have, if he would have came back, he could have started for a couple of years, and man, he's made NFL rosters. Right, he's made NFL roster, so I think he's probably a little bit underappreciated, really, in terms of what he did, because he wasn't at the level of Dexter Williams or Josh Adams. But yeah, I mean, he was a good player, and I think Kedron Young is like a better version of that. Is
one thing that Kedron Young just did, and that Tony Jones was actually really good at, is he used a hit, like an attempted tackle, as a way to evade the defense. So like he would absorb a tackle and then be able to like kind of make a cut off of that. As you say, like he got hit on the side, but he also had someone coming from his left, and he was able to absorb that hit and use that to move himself around the corner and score a touchdown. Tony Jones used to do that. Like he used to take a hit on the side and then bounce off it and then kind of make a break. And just like, defenders don't anticipate that. When a defender sees a hit coming, they assume that their target is going to be where that hit happens. And so when a player is able to absorb the hit, a running back is able to absorb the hit and make a cut off of that and use the momentum of the hit to make a move, that's where it's like there was a run in the USC game. He made a long run in the USC game in 2019. Tony Jones did, where it's like he had a hit from the side and he was able to make cut off of players. And like Kedron Young is very good at that. And so I think that's like a pretty like kind of it's a very running back thing, right? So like you don't get this a lot from like guys who convert to running back. Like Chris Tyree, not good at this. Like that is not a thing that he is good at, right?
Yeah.
Guys like Tony Jones Jr. and Kedron Young, like they're very good at that. So I think that's a big deal.
Just like pure running backs. Backs.
Yeah. Rumors that there is good news coming. What? We'll see. We'll see, Jamie. Stay tuned.
Could be.
Stay tuned. Could be. All right. Let's talk some more about Paul Menke Jr. So I like him as a player. I would rank him behind Gallegos. I would rank him behind Duane Lane, and I would rank him behind Jalen McClain as well, who we're going to talk about later. It's not like if he comes, I think that's a good take, and I think he's a good player for Notre Dame. I just like those guys better. I think they bring like right now just like a higher level of play. But he's a good football player. And then Grant Bricks, again, Jamie, and Malachi Williams, just important players.
Malachi Williams is super important prospect. Like that,
he's the Viper.
Elite pass rush potential.
Yeah.
Elite pass rush potential. Great motor, super twitchy guy.
Yeah. Jason Smith, hopefully for Xander, it's Rizak committed. It might be a couple of things. Might not just be one thing. All right, let's move on to the next weekend. June 6th through 8th, official visitors, DB Davis Andrews and running back Xavier Robinson. Davis Andrews, we've talked about. And you guys were talking about on Power Hour that Andrews is kind of like a 2026 recruit because he's going to take his mission. So he's kind of on down the line. So we'll see what happens there. Xavier Robinson. Now this is a big guy. I mean, this is like I don't think he's as big as Brandon Jacobs, but like in that kind of mold. What I will say is he has more long speed than you would think for someone of his size. And so that's why I think he's viable as a take here. Because I think once he gets into the secondary, he can do some stuff. Jamie, what do you see from Xavier Robinson?
I mean, I think he's pretty similar. I mean, obviously he's kind of fits with in that Kedron Young mold, right? It's like like you said, he's bigger, like he's taller, bigger, like he might be like a 250 guy or something by the time, like, and maybe look like he could probably carry it pretty well. Like he's kind of got that, but I think he's like he's pretty smooth for a big guy. Like just a lot of like smooth cuts. I think he's also another guy who sets up his blocks well. Smooth vision. He's not another guy with not like quite elite burst, right? Not elite burst, but that's not what you're at. That's not what you're recruiting him for, right?
Right.
That's not what you're recruiting him for. You're bringing him to be a hammer, right? You're bringing him to be a hammer, but he's also a guy with better feet and better vision than a guy who's just going to slam into the line and be a short yardage guy, right? So I like him. I definitely like him. But I would put Young ahead of him, but definitely a good back. And obviously you can see like this is a lot of small guy traits for a big guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is like if they're after like the big back thumper type, then I mean, obviously this is he fits that mold. Absolutely. It concerns me a little bit because you're saying he's not the big like elite burst. We don't think Kedron Young has elite burst. And I don't know. I mean, they're really banking on Aeneas Williams to be that guy. I mean, you also have to factor into like Jeremiah Love he definitely fits that description, like of a guy with the elite burst that he has. And so, you have to look at it in, I guess, in a 2-class kind of scenario here. But like Aeneas Williams paired with one of these guys, like how fast is this group going to be? That concerns me. I think if you're looking at running back, like you really need to be focusing on like guys who can really hit the home run. And
which is why Dupree, I like him because I think he has more of that.
Yeah. Same. But I mean, we'll see, right? We'll see how it goes. He said an official visit for Notre Dame, and so we'll see what comes of that. All right, let's move on to the next weekend, June 9th through the 11th. This is obviously a very packed weekend for recruiting. So defensive end Logan Thomas, tight end Carter Nelson, Bodie Cahoon, who we've talked about, Teddy Rizak, who we've talked about, Elijah Rushing, Marquise Gallegos, Chris Cole, and Oliver Miles. Oliver Miles put together a triple jump, Jamie, that is frankly stellar. Top 3 in the nation. Yeah. In the nation. Like that is, that is 50 feet, 10 inches as a triple jumper. And it's weird too, because his long jump is at like 22 feet, like under 23 feet, which like that doesn't calculate to me really. Like maybe he just likes the triple jump and that's what he focuses on. But 50 feet 10. I mean, if you're taking someone as an athlete, that is an athlete. That is an athletic thing to do.
I think too, and like people will probably one, because he does that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that gets you up in the rankings. Like they will move him up specifically because of that. Because
so like Cam Williams as well.
Yeah, and he's a guy who plays quarterback, so there isn't a ton of him playing safety. So it's all projectable, but you're like, man, this guy's an elite athlete. And we think that he's got a chance to be something. So that's kind of like the category that he fits in. I mean, we talked about a lot of these guys already. I'll take Chris Cole. The one thing about Cole is he fits the exact same thing as what we were talking about before. That type of player, right? Like he's a space player. He's a space player, really good perimeter player. I wouldn't, Jason Smith mentioned, I hope Teddy doesn't scare up guys like Cole. I mean, what do you mean? Like Notre Dame is going to be not on him, because I'm pretty sure he's not going to be scared off by Rizak. Like he's not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to be interested in Notre Dame because of that. I think it's more of like, I mean, the guy's got a lot of options. Like Alabama just offered him, right? Like he's got a lot of options. So, but I think, he's in that kind of mold where it looks like really like, that's what they want, is more of that kind of athlete, space backer in this class. It sounds like they want to take two of them, right? So I don't think they would be scared off by him, or else they wouldn't have offered House when you already kind of have a pretty good idea that you're going to get Rizak, right? So, and then Carter Nelson, if they're going to take a second tight end in this class, he's the type of guy you take. He's a great athlete. Another like guy who's like a basketball player too. Just one of these guys. I think obviously not as big, not even close to as big as an Eli Raridan, but in that same kind of thing where you're like, oh, this guy's ceiling is just sky high, like really, really, really high. And obviously like George is after him. Alabama offered him too after, Tommy Reese went there. Like, obviously Nebraska wants him too. Like there's, it's going to be stiff competition for him, but like literally no one has done as well with developing tight ends as Notre Dame. So maybe that's something that can really help separate them, because adding him to, what they already have in the class, like I think, you take a couple tight ends there, I think they're going to be fine. They're going to be really good. But if they only end up with just the one, I think they'll ultimately be fine as well. I don't think they should take someone just to take someone. It's got to be someone at that level. And rushing, who, I don't think we need to go into him too deep. Everybody kind of knows where he's ranked, but he's someone for me who took like a huge jump. He always had like the great tools as a sophomore. And he took a huge jump as a junior. He's a monster. He's like kind of almost like built like a Gervon Dexter, like a guy who went to Florida. But like he just was a lot twitchier, a lot more flexible in terms of his ability to kind of like get to the quarterback, and just speed to power, great long arm. Like I think, he would be top of the top in terms of a guy that can land in this class.
Yeah. And what do you think about Logan Thomas, Jamie?
Logan Thomas, another Viper type, right? So obviously he's in that same mold as Malachi Williams. Really, really good prospect. A guy who, if you watch his film, you could see like as the season went on, he got better and better, and you always love to see that. And he was playing kind of like all over the place, but really when he kind of settled in on the edge, he got better. He had a great, I guess it's not the Army camp or Adidas, whatever, the national combine that they have down in San Antonio that Christian watched him at, and he was dominant there. Just like a really good Viper type edge rusher, twitchy guy who needs to add weight, get a lot bigger. Same with Malachi Williams. Both those guys do. That's the type of athlete you want there on the edge.
Yeah. And then Marquise Gallegos, he's my top safety on the board. For me, he's very important. Very important.
Yeah, I would put him up. He's one of the most important guys left on the board.
Sure. Yeah. So they need to do a good job there. It's just vital, right? And now, Matt has been saying he thinks Notre Dame is going to turn down safeties. I could see it now, actually. Like I could see them having to say no to someone like Menke. where it's like if you land Gallegos and you landed Lane or McLean, then I could see them being like, maybe not. I don't think they should, frankly. They should not. They should not treat. I don't think they should treat Urlacher as a safety. I think they need to treat him as an athlete and bring in 3 safeties. If those are if you're turning down Mankey, then you have better have landed Gallegos, Lane, and McLean, in my opinion. Because if you haven't landed those 3, then Mankey to me is absolutely a take. So that's kind of how I see it. How do you feel about that?
I think they're just so different. So it's like, if I was going to say, like, comparing Mankey and McLean, like, I think Mankey might have a higher ceiling as an athlete, but McLean is like extremely high floor. Like, he's going to be a good football player. Like, I think he's a Julian Love type, you know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be that good, but I'm just saying in terms of your like instincts, physicality, just like, this guy's a baller. Like, he's a baller. Like, he's going to be a guy that you're like, that plays and will find a way to contribute during his career. I don't know if he's going to be like an elite guy, but he's going to be a good player.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of see it. Where Mankey, I think, I mean, certainly there's a lot of good stuff on film from him, but like, I think it's more projectable, where you kind of see him. And he's like, you know, he's longer, he's bigger, like that kind of thing, right? Like, how you see it. So I think based on kind of where they're at, I think like McLean would be like a really smart guy to take if he wants to come, for sure, because that's like, I don't want to call it a guarantee because nothing's ever guaranteed, but he's the safest, I think, out of all.
Yeah, and so he's
next to Gallegos.
So he set a visit that was confirmed by Matt today for June 16th to the 18th in Kingston, Villamar Asa. He's going to be on campus that weekend as well. I just think McLean, I think he can play multiple spots. It's like you said, there's just a lot of versatility there, and I think they need to. I think they need to get on it. I mean, if they end up landing Antonio Carter, it helps them if they don't hit their top guys this class, you know, because I mean, in theory, he's around for 2 years. I mean, I
don't think any of these guys are going to be like guys who play as freshmen.
Right. So that's why it's like it helps you if you don't land it, but then it makes like 2025 like super important again. It's just like you don't want to have to do that. Like don't stop looking to the next class.
I think it's, I think whatever they're going to end up with are guys who are going to be good, but it's just, they're not guys who are going to be, they don't have a Kyle Hamilton. There's not going to be, I mean, frankly, like, how many Kyle Hamiltons are there out there?
Well, right. Like you can't even say like they don't have a Kyle Hamilton, like, because you just don't bank on that. Right. Like he's very rare. And so, but it's like, Brian Branch, you know, or the kid from Alabama, like Jordan Battle, you know, like guys like that, right? Where it's like, you know, maybe they're second round picks.
And those guys played as freshmen,
right?
But they were good, but they played also more because it was like a weird year for Alabama where they didn't have the best safeties coming back. So, but they were good, but they weren't Kyle Hamilton good in that year, right? So it's just like, I mean, those guys would play right away at Notre Dame, but like Notre Dame's not in on any of those guys. And really, there's not a ton of those guys. Safety is also just notoriously, like, there's just not a ton of elite guys year in, year out, which is why when there's a guy like Kyle Hamilton, it's like really a unicorn.
Or Peyton Bowen.
Yes.
Yeah. You just want to land.
He would have been a guy who probably could have started this
year. Yeah. But again, I would say, watch the Antonio Carter space. He was on campus recently, and we think there's traction there. So watch that space, everybody. All right, Jamie, I think it's a good place to leave it. I messed up. We were going to talk about the Under Armour thing. I mean, I guess in a way it's good that it wasn't because this is a long show already. So we'll talk about that on Tuesday. We're going to do a mailbag on Tuesday. And so I'm asking someone to ask about the Under Armour. Someone asked about it in this chat, and I apologize for not getting it up. But yeah, we wanted to talk about that, but that'll come next week. So check us out next week on Tuesday on our normal time, and we'll talk about that. And then we're going to open it up to whatever question you want, whether it's recruiting or the team or whatever. So that's what's going to come up on Tuesday. Check in with irishsportsdaily.com. Bernie, that's dangerously close to Hamilton slander.
Bernie, this guy's the most positive guy in the world.
Be careful. And then he came in and slanders on Kyle. Please don't. Stay locked in irishsportsdaily.com. We think there's going to be some news. We've hinted at it a number of times on this show. So stay locked in irishsportsdaily.com. There's some stuff coming. Michael says, thanks, Greg and Jamie. Truly enjoy your thoughts and intel on everything. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being here.
Thank
you, everyone, for tuning in.
Bigger fan than Joe Long, who seemed to really hate on me. Thanks, Joe.
If this is your first time catching the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. Check us out on our podcast feeds. Links in the description below. All right, everybody. Have a good weekend. Have a good Friday, and we will talk to you on Thursday.